Okay, we're recording.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Beyond KU Social Change Chat, hosted by the University Career Center and our incredible co-host, the Center for Service Learning, really setting this up and with the topic and the initiative to get things going. Beyond Social Change is really a panel of experts who are going to talk a little bit about negotiating their personal drive for activism, for social justice, for social change, as well as employment and the practicalities and showing students and others how that's possible. We have six participants today, and I would like to just get them talking as soon as possible rather than taking up a lot of times with myself with long-winded introductions. And so, as a way to get to know everybody, we're going to have them tell us a little bit about themselves and what they do as far as where they're working and kind of their day-to-day action to kick things off. And we could start right off the bat with KJ, please.
Hi, my name's KJ Abel Rush. I am at the United Way of Kaw Valley in the Douglas County office. I oversee the Roger Hill Volunteer Center and our county AmeriCorps program. So I help coordinate volunteers, either individuals who are looking for volunteer opportunities or groups or agencies that need volunteers. So a lot of connecting with others. And then AmeriCorps members serve in health and human services agencies in Douglas County. So it's connecting those individuals who want to do a term of service with the agencies in our county to do that.
Okay, thank you. And Kelsey.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Kelsey Dockman, and I'm a board certified behavior analyst. I received my PhD in behavioral psychology from the University of Kansas, where I did my clinical and research work in youth development and juvenile justice. I'm the founder and CEO of Center for Supportive Communities, which is a nonprofit organization in Lawrence. And basically, our mission is to infuse evidence-based interventions in communities to improve behavioral health outcomes for kids, mostly at risk for or with current involvement in the juvenile justice system. Within that, I am the director of our Support Ed program, which functions as a community-based diversion program for truant students and their families. And it's also a training site for undergraduate students seeking hands-on clinical experience. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, amazing, amazing already. Samaya.
Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you all. I'm Samaya Parr Kramer Moore. I'm an analyst at the Kansas Health Institute. So KHI is a nonprofit educational organization. Our mission is to improve the health of all Kansans through nonpartisan research, education, and engagement that supports effective policymaking. And in my role as an analyst, I primarily support population health work for KHI. That looks like research for different community and state partners. It also looks like facilitation work, so helping community stakeholders have tough conversations about next steps and how to make decisions that make sense for their communities, and also technical assistance. So I work directly with a lot of communities through a few different grants, one with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas, their Pathways Initiative, to help community members look at the great work they're doing, decide how to evaluate the work that they've been doing over several years, and then how to communicate that impact out to other community members to really build up more momentum for the work.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you. Alex.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Guerrero, and I am a program manager for strategic initiatives at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. I am centered within our performance management team at the agency. So we work across all of our bureaus and divisions, as well as with external partners. So my work primarily supports things like quality improvement, a substantial amount of grants administration and grants writing, as well as a lot of other agency-wide initiatives.
Perfect. Thank you. Courtland.
Hi, all.
My name is Cortland Triplett. I am currently in my final year of study at the George Washington University School of Law in DC. And I have been working as a law clerk and an associate throughout my time at law school. And right now I do trademark and copyright law, which is particularly kind of cool. At least my nerdy side comes out because so many companies, businesses, people want to control the quality of what they do. And so I had the exciting opportunity to work for some nonprofits on their trademarks. And they're often the types of people who don't get excellent legal services. And so that is what I do now, and that is what I look forward to doing in the future. Thank you.
Terrific. If you are super excited about trademark and copyright law, you are in the right venue. This is the place for it. Alejandro, go ahead.
Howdy, y'all. Nice to see everyone. My name is Alejandro Rangel Lopez. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm a project coordinator for New Frontiers, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm an organizer for New Frontiers. And I work in primarily Southwest Kansas, mostly in Dodge City and Garden City right now, though the hope is eventually to expand to Liberal. We're part of a larger organization, a statewide organization that y'all might be familiar with, called Loud Light, and they do a lot of voting rights and advocacy on a variety of different issues. So that's basically what I do essentially, just specifically for folks in geared towards folks in Southwest Kansas. So yeah, what I do is I help folks under 35 build political, social, and economic power right there at home. Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but yeah, that's me.
Okay, for sure. Now we have students here for our audience, and so they are really interested, I'm sure, to see the sort of pathways that you would take from you graduating university, becoming into the positions that you are now. So I think it will go around so that you could tell us your superhero origin story. Like, how did it all begin from graduating to where you are now? And I would be super interested into learning, did you go on the job market after you graduated with activism and social justice in mind, or did you just go on the job market and your current roles were getting you inspired to do social activism and social justice? I would love to hear the relationship between those type of things. Let's start for a change with Kelsey.
Yeah, so this is a great question. There are many different ways that you can go about getting a job. I have kind of a unique story. I worked with our truancy program that we now run through Center for Supportive Communities, but I worked with the program when I was a doctoral student at the University of Kansas. My graduate advisor ended up retiring at the same time that I graduated. So I was fortunate enough to be able to take the program that she really created from the start and grow it. When I was a doctoral student, I was exposed to many systemic issues impacting marginalized communities. And all of these issues were exacerbated, right, by the pandemic. So I figured that I needed, one, this program couldn't end. I knew that we needed to continue providing supportive services for our young people. And I was also really interested in expanding those services. So I was fortunate to be able to not go on the job market and really create my position from the ground up. I guess fortunate would be a word we're not sure, but it's been a lot of work, but it's been so meaningful and a truly great learning experience.
Awesome. Thank you. How about Cortland?
Sorry, I forget about the mute button. Yeah, so I had zero interest in going to law school and being an attorney, none whatsoever. Prior to my graduation at the University of Kansas, I was working for the mayor pro tem in Kansas City, Missouri. And I had a conversation with him and I was like, I want to do stuff like this. I want to write policy. I want to create things that I feel help people, that improve the world. And he tells me, he's like, you got to go to law school. It is the best decision that you can make for your life, if you want to truly be sharp on the policy stuff. And so I turned down a job to be the district manager in Kansas City, Missouri, to go to law school and torture myself for 3 years. But it has been so very, very helpful. A lot of the nonprofit work that I get to do and volunteering involves some of the policy-oriented stuff. Now, I'm on the trademark side of it now, and so I really help these nonprofits and businesses control the quality of their brand. But this is really sort of a stepping stone for me even now. You know, I'm just getting started with my legal career. And one of the things that the mayor shared with me is that even as I go and move through this space, as he did, is that I sort of create a space for myself within this law firm environment that still helps improve the world around me in these marvelous and wondrous ways.
Okay, Jay.
I would say I did not pursue this career. I graduated with an exercise science major, but my emphasis was leisure management. So I kind of got driven to the volunteer part through 4-H. I was a 4-H'er growing up, and working with volunteers over the years and just learning that this is a niche for me to help others follow their passion and find what that passion is. And through the United Way, it's more social driven, being a girl who benefited from Title IX and playing sports with the boys. So seeing the impact of representation and how much that is meaningful to people and being helped to drive that conversation. Over the years, I've kind of just taken a winding path to get to where I have, because of some inexperiences. I was a free and reduced lunch student. We got a lot of the social service benefits growing up. So being able to help others understand that, but also provide those services to individuals, was not a direct road. So I found it over time.
Thank you for those comments, though, because it is an anomaly for it to be point A to point B. It is much more of a winding road. So I'm sure the students appreciate that. Alejandro.
Yeah, so I had a pretty similar, similar in that I wanted to go to law school. So like say Cortland, but let me start from the beginning. When I first really got involved with like just social justice work and doing these kind of things, it was right after 2016 and the aftermath of that election. At that time, I was 16. I couldn't fathom how that could happen and like why, like any sort of those things. I just knew that like the world was going to change. And like leading up to that election, I felt even at 16 that I could have done a little bit more in my corner of the world out in Southwest Kansas. And it kind of all just snowballed from there. I started getting involved with my local county like Democratic Party, and then involved with the ACLU of Kansas, doing work on voting rights. Then more stuff in high school. But yeah, then I sued my county for moving the polling site outside of city limits. And while that court case didn't win, we now have 2 polling sites, which is a win for me. You know, we've still got a lot of work to do, but that's why I'm in this position. So it was so started there, and then I went to college, and I was like, I was part of the LEAD program, and so the Legal Education Accelerated Degree, and then I talked to law students and looked at those courses and like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. So what I ended up graduating with was a degree in public administration and political science, because and it was public administration that really drew my interest, really looking at how these systems came to be, how they work, and then in my current role, really looking at, okay, well then how can we adjust them or dismantle them to make them better and more equitable for everybody, especially at the local, like small level. So it was really, I think, the social impact that came first, and then I kind of through those connections I made when I was 16, 17, that organizer I talked to at the ACLU of Kansas, she moved over to Loudlight, and when I graduated, she offered me a job. I knew that this is something that I wanted to do. I wanted to move in this direction. It just didn't become clear until probably maybe the last 2, 3 years.
Terrific. Another valuable lesson for all the students watching. We have one participant who didn't want anything to do with law school and is about to finish law school with his law degree, and another participant who was definitely going to law school and never entered law school. That is life, students. That's perfect. Alex.
I would say I could draw a couple of parallels between Alejandro's experience as well, that, you know, it was pretty service driven, I would say, versus career specific driven. And I'd been involved throughout my undergrad years in community-based research. And so started out as like a pre-med major or taking all these, you know, classes intending to go the sort of medical field route. At the same point that the summer after my freshman year, I got a job at a hospital with my emergency medical technician license. And I started community-based research around adverse childhood experiences and adult health outcomes in partnership with a local community-based organization. And having those experiences side by side made it very clear to me that I was really not excited to go to work at the hospital every day, but I was really excited, you know, to work with that CBO and, you know, gather these surveys, help inform, you know, the life skills programming that was happening. So that is definitely how I kind of found both the service route and stayed involved, and got into, I would say, the field of public health at first. So fast forward, some of that research I was able to present, and it caught the attention of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, or there was a couple of connections made there, and I was able to be an intern in undergrad. So post-graduation, you know, they were pretty excited to help find a space for me, in particular, you know, amidst the COVID pandemic where there was a lot of turnover and a lot of work for public health to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great example for the students of what we really mean by networking, which is really just having a bunch of experiences where you get to meet interesting people that want to work with you later, rather than it's just trading business cards to ask for favors later. That's a great example. Last, Samaya.
I think very similarly, I started with this service mindset. I will say, going into KU for my undergrad, I thought I was going to go into political science, and that was definitely not the route I went in. So kind of got into this situation where I was just trying different classes, seeing what was interesting to me and what I was passionate about. And then fast forward the 4 years, I graduated with 3 majors in applied behavioral science, law and society, and Spanish, which was a really interesting combination for me because it was exactly what I wanted to do, kind of blending all of these different fields. But you certainly don't need to go that route. And during this time, I was also working as a community organizer for Kansas Appleseed around food access and housing. And that was really important to me because I was kind of diving into working with community members, being of service, and also thinking through kind of the structures and the systems. And one thing that I left Appleseed with is, one, I'm not well suited as a community organizer, but I am a researcher. I'm really good at having those conversations with communities and kind of helping community members think through a problem and how to get the answers to that problem. So that brought me to my master's program. I went to the University of Oxford for a master's in evidence-based social intervention and policy evaluation. And then after that, I was looking for jobs and I was thinking, I always knew I wanted to come back to Kansas because when I was at Appleseed, I noticed that they're really like, we need the research here. We need these conversations that are structures. And I was thinking through organizations that I had seen their research from when I was an undergrad, when I was at Appleseed, thinking through tough problems, not in an advocacy element. KHI, the organization I'm at now, is not an advocacy organization. They are nonpartisan. But they really focus on providing evidence and community support so that community members, stakeholders can make the best decisions for their contexts. And that was really empowering to me, and thinking through, how do I want to show up in the work? So a little bit twisty in the path for sure.
Yeah, incredible. Your master's program sounds contradictorily extremely narrow by its title, yet incredibly flexible for the types of things that you could do with it. Let's do a macro-micro question based on your time as an undergraduate for the students. The macro question is, how much, if at all, by the way, the answer might not be not at all, how much, if at all, did your actual major prepare you for your role? And then the micro question is, on a day-to-day basis, what skills do you need right now for your day-to-day that you are capitalizing on? So did your major help at all prepare you? And now currently on a day-to-day basis, what skills are you employing for your role? Let's kick it off with Courtland.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's one that I think about often. And so I think my time at KU and my major did help to prepare me for what I'm doing now, because the thing I've always said about KU is, at least for me, it was sort of like this collegiate Xanadu, in that it tested me and reproved me in the exact ways that I needed to be challenged. And that sort of process of this testing and reproving produced empathy in me. And empathy is the very skill that you need to be in this field of work. And lawyering, broadly speaking, is advocacy work. If you fail to see the humanity in the person opposite your position, then you're going to have a lot of trouble in advocacy work. And I think that goes for a lot of us. Functioning as an ideologue puts you on a path to being a factotum of polarization, which is the exact thing that we don't want to do, because in advocacy, we hope to function to make things whole, to make people whole, to restore. And so we have to be ushers of the exact opposite thing, to be reconciliation, and empathy is the thing that KU helped me to find. And that is the skill that I think is pivotal to what I do.
Amazing. Thank you. Alex.
I would say the major or the majors that I pursued at KU definitely did help prepare, but I wouldn't necessarily leave it at only the majors. I would say like I mentioned, the community-based research. I wrote a grant proposal as a freshman, and I'm in the middle of one at my current position now. Now, granted, the magnitude is much different, but starting some of those skill sets certainly helped equip me for where I am now. And I would also say, some of the sort of extracurricular involvement. I was a co-director for the Center for Community Outreach, where I helped manage budgets, and now that's a part of my role as well. So even the pieces that I didn't necessarily think would be tying into my later career, like managing budgets versus, public health education or something, I was thinking in my brain at the time. Funny how some of those do circle back, and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad that I've had this experience before, because it's certainly helping me now. I would say on sort of the daily, skill sets that are needed, I would say first and foremost is flexibility. Something that you might not be super used to, or that I didn't feel like I was super used to, when you get, each of your scheduled assignments and you can get in a really good routine. I love a good routine. But my career is definitely, given the working in public health and the pandemic, but also just generally, I think the my position has required a lot of flexibility and determination, I would say. But
Terrific. Thank you. Kelsey.
So my undergraduate degree is in psychology, and then I ended up doing my doctoral training in applied behavioral science. And now I'm a CEO with absolutely no formal training in business whatsoever. So to answer your question, yes and no. It did kind of help me, but you are constantly learning. And I think more importantly, it's maybe not the exact subject you are studying, it's everything that is surrounding what you are studying. So you learn how to organize, how to plan ahead, how to work with others, how to collaborate, how to communicate effectively, both in whatever you are vocally saying, but also in your writing. You learn how to think critically, how to absorb the information that you are receiving, and how to analyze it and make good decisions. And so I think that all of those skills will be helpful in anything that you do, regardless if you do go into exactly what you are studying in the moment. But all of those skills that surround getting an undergraduate degree will follow you forever.
Okay, terrific. Just so you all know, I'm just going to loop all of these particular answers into my senior class this semester, being like, I'm telling you, guys. How about Samaya?
Yeah, so I think on a very technical level, my majors at KU serve to introduce me to social determinants of health. And that's something that I use daily through my job, and thinking about the lens through kind of health outcomes aren't just one in the medical space. You're thinking about them more broadly, and the social policy structures all contributing to health. And more of an adaptive way, I would echo what Cortland said, really coming out of KU, and something I use every day in my current job is thinking about how can we be good listeners? How can we really sit across from people that we may disagree with, but meet them where they're coming from, listen to really the real concerns, and think through additional questions asked, approach it with a desire to learn, and can move forward collaboratively.
KJ.
My degree was exercise science, which wouldn't seem like it would fit, but since my emphasis was leisure management and volunteers and AmeriCorps members and others are giving of their time, you're helping them to manage their time. It definitely does fit. There was a lot of business classes I did take, but also risk management, because we're working with a lot of individuals. Part of my role is working with emergency management. If disaster happens, what to do that. So some of that risk management that I learned through exercise science carries over more than I ever thought it would. And some of the skills are very much that everyone's already said. Empathy is a huge one, especially since it's social services. You're working with people that sometimes this is the worst day of their life. Potentially, or they feel like it is. So you're trying to empathize and help them get services that they need, and just kind of prioritizing your schedule. I work very with a lot of autonomy. I kind of make my own schedule. So as you're studying for classes, figuring out which is your priority, as different people are asking a lot of different things with deadlines, is probably the biggest thing that is carried over, because they don't necessarily know what you have going on, even though they're asking some pretty big things of you at times.
Thank you. Alejandro.
Yeah, so a lot of great points have been made that I'm gonna draw upon. But yeah, I mean, as far as my major goes, like I said, I got my BA in public administration and political science. The poli-sci, I kind of just kept it, if I'm being honest, I kind of just kept it because I had a lot of credits already there. So I'm like, okay, why not? But public administration was what really drew my interest and really kind of led me down to this path where I'm at now. With poli-sci, I felt like the program was a lot more geared towards national stuff. at least bigger picture stuff, where I wanted to do more local city and county level things. But yeah, I mean, I do think I mean, it still helped a lot, and knowing, I guess, how politics works, how Congress works, and just, I mean, again, systems, how all these systems function. And then with public administration, it really kind of tied that together with my work. With, okay, so how we know how these um, systems function. We know how they came to be, and now with public administration, it added the piece of, here's some alternatives. Here is here's how that can change. Here's how we can create something more equitable. And for that, it was really inspiring, at least for me, because it kind of gave me some sort of direction, some sort of like positive thing to look towards. Like, okay, yeah, our systems suck, but there is hope for changing them. And it doesn't have to be this like large, far-reaching thing. It starts small. So yeah, that's how I think, at least my degree helped with that. But along the way, throughout my college career, I met a whole host of and variety of folks who have also contributed to how I see the world, how I interact with people, and how I do my work. So yeah, I mean, and on a micro scale, on a day-to-day basis, I think these, like, as far as like skills that you need for being a community organizer, like Samaya said, it's not for everyone. And part of the reason is, okay, my biggest gripe is, you need to know your community. If you're organizing in a community, my feelings are, you should be from that community, or at least be like someone who's lived there for a long time. My biggest gripe with some organizations is they bring in whoever, some rando, who I have no doubt they have great like skills and all that, but it doesn't work because there's not that connection. There is not that, like, there's no skin in the game necessarily, right? Because they do their work and then they leave. With me, I do my work because I live in my community and I want to see my community thrive. And I want to bring other folks up along with me. So yeah, aside from that, you need to be social media savvy in this day and age. Most organizing is in person, or should be personal, but you do need to have some skills with social media, especially with TikTok now, to get your message out. And interpersonal skills, absolutely. Like Cortland said, a lot of, you need to have empathy. You need to be able to, yeah, you need to be able to like understand where folks are coming from, and their thought process, and why that thought process is the way it is. And as well as like what language shifts do you need, how do you need to talk about this so that you can get folks involved? Because it can be very scary if I throw all these words at you right now and it's just like, okay, well, I don't know what we're doing, or like what we're talking about, or where to start. You just overwhelmed me. So it's an ongoing process, but yeah. And those are at least some of the day-to-day skills, I guess,
Okay.
that I use.
Okay, terrific. Now we're all in amazing positions. We are doing amazing work, and we love it all, but we have to have some sense of reality. So we should do the old pros and cons question. Tell me one or two, both professional and personal, benefits that you take from the role that you're in. And why don't you give us one or two challenges that are the other side of that coin? We'll start with Samaya for this one.
Yeah, so I think so you have an opportunity kind of as new students to decide where you want to do your work. For me, it was really important that I was in Kansas, because this is home. So I think that's both a professional benefit and a personal benefit to be able to be doing research that impacts communities across the state, in the state I'm living. I think another benefit is really, for me, KHI is not a very large organization. And as a researcher, even pretty early in my career, I'm able to propose projects and think through different studies or different opportunities to engage community members and propose them, engage with stakeholders. I don't think that's something you necessarily get at a larger organization early in your career. So that was one thing that I think is a pro for my current position. I think some challenges you'll encounter almost everywhere. Sometimes work can be a little bit seasonal. So you'll have times where work is pretty heavy, and then you'll have times where maybe there's less going on. So having that flexibility to kind of understand and manage your time can be a challenge, and one that I'm still working to improve upon.
Thanks. KJ.
I would say one of the challenges is working for a nonprofit. The word nonprofit. People think that it's nonprofit, so you are willing to live on scraps. There's not money involved, which is a challenge. A lot of people who do work in nonprofits do it because they're passionate about it, not because of the paycheck. But I think that's why I do it, is it's the passion, it's giving back to the community. I get to work with a lot of volunteers. My AmeriCorps members are giving back to their community. So that's a great thing for me, is I get to work with a variety of people. AmeriCorps members, I have college students, and I have seniors who are giving back, and they're after they've retired. So that's a pro and con too. I get to work with a lot of different people, but it's understanding those different people, those different generations, their needs, what they can and cannot do for that. And I think for me, it also connects me to the community and what the challenges are, so I can advocate and talk to other community members about what is going on and what the real needs really are. Sometimes volunteering is a feel good for you versus are you making a positive impact in your community? We get a lot of groups that come to volunteer for us, and they're wanting a specific date for 50 volunteers for an organization. That can be detrimental to the organization. So it's a lot of that education piece and people's understanding of volunteering. So I get to do a lot of education, which is the best part for me. So some of the pros are also cons. It just depends on how you look at it.
Right on. Well said. Cortland.
Yeah, the biggest benefit, honestly, is the financial security with the legal field and with it firms. And that's not just so that, I can have vats of wealth to myself and go buy the fanciest of cars. I've never had an interest in doing that, but it's so that I can do things that are important to me, like give to my church or give to a nonprofit that I really care about, help a friend in need, even things like that. And honestly, that's just like a hugely important thing for me to be able to do. But with that comes a very difficult challenge, is that sometimes the money and the morals or the ethics of you are going to clash. I've been lucky enough that in my time as a clerk and previously as an associate, that they didn't really clash that much. But I've known people who have had to wrestle with those things. For example, there was another person in the trademark field. I won't name the clients, but there's a large construction company which had found a small nonprofit in like Arkansas who helped to house people, and yet they were using their mark. And so this person had to prepare the arguments and the briefings to go after this small little nonprofit for this major $1 million construction company. And so it's hard sometimes when you say, I just really don't agree with this and I really don't like it. And so I think the advice there and what I've been doing is that if those things come up, you have to say what you just won't do, and make it to where 80% of what you do, or put a percentage on it, is something that you can be proud of. And then that 20%, you have to roll the dice sometimes. So that is a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, especially where you're going with the law and ethical considerations. It's useful. Alejandro.
Several. I don't know where to start. But let me think. So for pros, so I found out I had ADHD in college. So that was something in addition that I had to like figure out, not just for my this is my sophomore year, but for my education, but also for my career. How do I deal with that? So within this role as a community organizer, and having like ADHD, it's one of those roles that like, and this is a pro by the way, but it gives you a lot. They give you with the role, it gives you a lot of flexibility to kind of do what you think would work best for your community, and a lot of variety, which is very important to me. I don't like feeling like I'm just doing something over and over again and like repeating. That doesn't work for me, and it would lead to like, and has led to burnout in the past very quickly. But yeah, I'm grateful for that pro here. So a lot of flexibility, and then a con, a lot of flexibility. I struggle sometimes with creating my own like schedule, and I like I struggle a lot with time. I have to have like a clock, a visual like little clock, analog clock with like anywhere that I'm at. I usually wear a watch, but it's really difficult sometimes, especially when you're in the middle of legislative session or you're working on a big project or something, and then just something, it's just one thing after another. It's really difficult to kind of figure out how to work with your time, what to prioritize, and yeah. So, and another con I think that I want to mention here is, especially when you're a community organizer in the community you're from, it's hard to separate yourself from the work that you're doing, and that is emotionally exhausting. So so really, I still struggle with that. I'm getting better at it, but really being able to separate yourself from work, and it honestly, I don't know if there is like a 100% separation there, because I'm part of the community that I'm trying to like engage. So it's a balancing act.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Kelsey.
Yeah, so the benefits for me, uniting communities around supporting kids and teens, that's really what drives me every day. There truly, for me at least, is nothing more rewarding than creating meaningful change for kids who don't have many caring adults in their lives. The feeling of seeing a child succeed when so many of the adults in their world have doubted them or doubted their abilities. And that's just a very powerful feeling for me. And that's definitely what drives me. But it's also a challenge, right? So creating meaningful change is a benefit and a challenge. It's really, really tough to create systems level change. It's hard. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to have a lot of patience, and you have to be motivated, because if you're not motivated, then it's super easy to just kind of fall off and, let them make decisions and just kind of sit in the back. So it's sometimes frustrating, but it's definitely rewarding in the end. Also, a challenge for me is bridging behavioral health with juvenile law, which often conflicts a lot with each other, what's written in the law versus what is best practice in terms of behavioral health outcomes. So that can be very challenging in trying to explain to attorneys who really don't have any sort of knowledge of behavioral health world, can be tough at times. But also, to kind of piggyback on what Portland was saying, when you also add politics onto that as well, make sure that you are relying on your moral compass to help you set boundaries from the outset.
Okay, thank you. Alex.
I would say a couple of the pros, personally and professionally, is, figuring out that I really enjoyed sort of the systems level work. Being at the state level allows you to kind of look across the state as a whole and see the systems at play, and be able to, affect positive change across those systems. On the other side of that, as Kelsey just mentioned and has been mentioned, affecting positive systemic change is a long process. It's a challenging process. It's taxing professionally sometimes, where you have to have those difficult conversations, and personally when you have skin in the game, you're invested in the success, and it's taking a long time and it's coming with challenges. So I would say, again, that's one of those two-sided coins, but also sort of another pro that I really enjoy about my position is that we're in a relatively small team. So we have 3 FTE, but we do a lot of work. And so I do get to have opportunities to learn more about quality improvement, to support strategic planning, to know more about performance management and health equity and environmental justice and grants administration. And so I do like the feeling of continuously learning and growing the skill set, all while being able to apply that to improving our services for Kansans.
Okay, excellent. Let's give some direct advice to the students, shall we? In hindsight, so hindsight's 2020. If you look back and imagining what you're doing on a daily basis, what is one thing you would tell the students they should definitely try to accomplish or learn while they're still a student? Something concrete. Is it study abroad? Is it to improve your analytical writing skills? Is it to give more presentations so you're public? Whatever, something concrete. If you could go back and be like, man, I wish I would have honed that skill if I knew I was going to be in this role, what would that thing or 2 things be to give some advice for the students that they might be able to capitalize on while they're studying? Let's change up the order and go back to Alejandro.
Oh boy. I'm also a really big advocate for mental health and mental health resources. I think as a college student, I think it's mental health is not as overlooked as it once was, but it's still something that I think every college student should take care of and receive and look for services if they're available to you. When you're a college student at KU, there's a lot more options, at least more accessible options, than when you start your career, especially in this field. Because at least for me, when I was first starting out at KU as a freshman, it was really tough. I had no support system. I was 4 or 5 hours away from home, and like I struggled with making friends. And aside from that, I had undiagnosed ADHD, so that stuff was bubbling up also. So when I was looking at mental health resources and like getting checked out for those things, I found it really helpful because I figured out how to talk to how my brain works. First of all, that's really important. Figure out how your brain works, what doesn't. Better to get it done now than like later and figure out I've been doing this and it like something sucks. And also, yeah, just how to it taught me all those things, and also just how to talk about feelings and stuff like that, which is really important, especially when you're working with a lot of people.
Okay, thank you. That was kind of an amazing take on that question about underutilized resources on campus that students should really be aware of. I thank you for that. Kelsey.
So for those of you who are interested in going into the helping profession, like behavior analysis, psychology, social work, just to name a few, definitely seek out as many opportunities as you can to actually get that hands-on clinical experience. This will help you narrow in on who you want to work with and the type of treatment approach that you want to take. I promise that you will never truly know the population that you want to work with. Do you want to work with kids? Do you want to work with teens? Do you want to work with kids with developmental or intellectual disabilities? Do you want to work with neurotypical teens and families? There's a lot of different populations with whom you can work and a lot of different treatment approaches. So definitely try them out, because you can't ever know which one you want to focus on unless you do put yourself out there and put yourself in the situation where you're working with a variety of populations so that you can actually figure out what you want to do. And then if you are interested in going into grad school, you'll have to make a choice of, do I go straight into graduate school? Do I take a few years off? It's completely up to you. There is no good way to do it. I've seen some students take a year off to get a lot of good job opportunities, to start making money before you go into grad school, to get more clinical experience. And I've also seen students go straight into it. That is a personal decision that you need to make based on your circumstances. There's no right way to do it. I've seen it done both ways, and I've seen both ways be super, super successful and useful. So definitely make that decision based on what is right for you.
Thank you for that last bit of advice. I often tell that to my students. I'll have seniors sitting in my office chair in August saying, should I work first or go to graduate school first? And my first question is, do you have any offers yet? Have you been accepted anywhere? Do you have just your job is to apply to everything and see how your individual life turns out. So thank you for that piece of advice. Cortland.
Hi, yes, I'm so sorry. My computer is about to die soon. So do you mind if I just run and get a charger and maybe come back to me? I'm so sorry.
I certainly will. Yes, no
Okay.
problem whatsoever. Samaya.
Yeah, so I had I have two. I haven't been able to narrow it down. The first one, I would say take a communications class. Take speech. I know there's some minimum requirements that students often do take at KU. I'd encourage go a little bit beyond that, because one thing that in all of the social impact careers that you'll be doing every single day is talking with people, and talking with people who have very different experiences from you, who use different language. Having those skills to be able to adapt your language to the setting is really, really helpful. So even if it doesn't directly relate to your career, that is one thing I wish I had done more of. And then if I can, my second one would be recommending seek out opportunities that make you a little bit uncomfortable. I'm a strong believer of you grow by being a little bit uncomfortable in different spaces, whether that's seeking out a new hobby or a new opportunity. One reason I studied abroad is because that made me a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm glad I did that. But thinking through more and more opportunities to do that, and I think that kind of flexibility you get from going into situations, exploring new things that just make you a little bit more uncomfortable so you can grow, is going to be something you do daily in any career you choose.
Okay, awesome. KJ.
Some of the things I wrote down are very similar: communication, telling stories, but as people were talking, an opportunity to be a leader in an organization on campus, especially if you're going into social justice, because as a lot of people said, we're small organizations. So having a little bit of that experience of how an organization works, how structures work, governance, all the steps that go into it. Is this really something I want to do, or do I want to support it? Because there's so many things that can go into it. I think it's something I wish I would have understood and learned better. I've learned it through my volunteer work as a result, and it ties in now. But like grant writing, fundraising, there's so many different things when it comes to social justice work, especially in nonprofits. It's just anyone can lead, have that mentality, like the KLC says to us. and taking those opportunities to feel uncomfortable.
Okay, thank you. Alex.
I think there's been a lot of good ones that I would echo. You know, definitely sort of to KJ's and Samaya's point. My coursework prepared me for something, but like I wish I would have taken a business class, for example. Communications, I would say, or like a business sort of strategy approach, because it's was an uncomfortable situation to then find myself needing to cover some of these responsibilities and not feeling super equipped at that moment to do that. Now, there's probably hopefully wonderful staff that could help you along that journey, and you learn along the way. But if I could have done something a little bit differently, I probably would have broadened some of those general classes to include more comms or business.
Okay, thanks. And back plugged in, gets the last piece of advice. No pressure. There's just a big finale. Go ahead, Cortland.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a piece of advice that I've already heard echoed by several people, and I'll just be very direct with it. It's just a network, and KU has resources for it. I will tell you that a lot of the doors that opened for me were only because of the people that I knew. Sometimes it's not what you know. World sucks sometimes, but literally just partners at firms. If you want to go to law school, then go to the pre-law conferences that happen over the summer. Talk to the KU law professors. I talked to the dean of KU Law School. So just meet people, get out there, and say hi and be nice. It goes a long way.
Awesome, thank you. Well, our hour is just about up. I don't want us to run over at all. And so I really want to say thank you to all of the participants for attending and speaking to us and the students. This will be, as we mentioned at the beginning, recorded. So not only are the participants that were here with us live benefiting from your advice, but many students will watch this at their leisure from our online portion and also benefit from it. I really want to personally thank you, because all of you really made the point I want to try to get across to my students, is that you can marry the idea that you're going on a journey that you yourself are becoming self-actualized. It's fulfilling for you. It's what you want to do, but just as a fringe benefit and a side effect, you are also bringing so much change to society, to people around you. And so to be able to do both of those and not have to sacrifice one for the other, I think it's been really incredible examples that you've all set. And so I really appreciate that and the time you spent. And so again, thanks for all of your advice. And this has been Beyond KU, Unemployment for Social Change and Social Justice. Thanks, everyone.